Going on, y'all? How's your guys' day going? Hope you're having a good day. My day's good. Thank you for asking. So today I wanted to talk about a point of perspective, I guess, about just anything, really, nothing in particular. I think a lot in, I don't really know I wish there was a word that I could explain it. I guess just parallelism, where I constantly make connections between things. And I find myself thinking a lot how it seems like, and obviously, the world has always been going in this direction, but clearly more so than ever, it just seems like things fit but don't belong. And the reason why I say things is because originally I was going to say people, right? I was going to say something like you fit but might not belong, or I might not fit and don't belong. But I realized I may as well make it into just a broader perspective, because it really is everything. It really is. And it obviously starts from us. You know, they say the same things all the time, but everything starts from us. Everything starts from thought. It starts from within. It starts from your childhood, etc., right? You've heard it all before. Nothing complicated. But I guess if I had to give a different perspective on the same topic, or rather the same perspective but with a different outlook, if that makes sense, right? Because when you hear these type of things, when you hear people talking about these types of things, how it just seems like everything is so misplaced, so misguided, you're not really going to hear anything different. But I feel as though that it comes from a place of need. It comes from a very, almost I want to say possessive. It comes from this place of demand that things need to have a purpose in of themselves, almost. And there's obviously a better way to say it, but in the most simple terms, it just seems like we are constantly demanding something from anything that simply isn't there, right? So you could pick anything, and for the sake of conversation, we'll pick people. And I remember being younger. I remember being a teenager, or even a kid, really. I feel like ever since I was, third grade, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, around somewhere in that range, I feel like I always remember that feeling of not belonging, right? Like, obviously you have friends, obviously you have people that you get along with, you find your way, right? You're not necessarily alone, but you're lonely. One of those situations where there's a dichotomy and you really don't know how to place yourself. You really don't know where to begin, where you begin and where you end, so to speak. And I feel like that feeling, that discomfort in that specific scenario, for me at least, it came from the need of others, and not just something silly like validation, but it came from the fact that I constantly felt like I needed other people to exist, right? And not I needed other people to exist, I needed other people so that I could exist. That's what I meant. And it wasn't until, I guess, I made the distinction, or that I made the observation to myself, which is something I feel like a lot of people don't do. They don't really take the time to tell themselves the things they think. And so they don't know until they say it, right? Socrates, he said it a bajillion years ago. He said, a man cannot know or not know what he knows and what he does not know. And so I remember going through the process of basically just telling myself, or talking to myself in a way where I guess I realized, or that I disconnected in a way. And it seems like a lot of people clearly go through that, but it's spread. It's almost like a disease. It's spreading into just everything, and people are noticing it, but people don't know what to do. I feel like that's where we're at, right? There's definitely no shortage of people who talk, right? I think of the same quote always. It's by you're probably going to get upset at me for saying it wrong if you know who this is, but Deleuze, I don't know. I'm too lazy to look up the pronunciation of it. But basically the quote, I'm paraphrasing it, it goes a little something like this. It says, "Stupidity's never blind or mute, so it's not a problem to get people to speak. Rather, it's a problem to get people to say something worth listening to, right? And so I feel like that's where we're at, despite the fact that it's always been that way, which that's another side note that I could make. Things have always been this way. I say a lot of the same things in my videos, but it isn't like these things are new, right? These things don't pop up. They just get more extreme to the point that you can't look away, essentially, right? They get so extreme and they cover so much of life that you don't have a choice but to notice it, right? It's it's in your face everywhere you go. Every time you talk to somebody, every time you don't talk to somebody, every time you watch a movie, it doesn't matter what it is, there is this ever-growing need of place. There just has to be something for something. And it's almost like, this might be a bit of a weird analogy, but it reminds me of like horror movies where the, I guess, main villain or main creature or whatever has to kill or has to extract essence from the people that they're killing in order to stay alive, right? And I feel like that's exactly where we're at, where it just seems like everyone and everything, whether they mean to or not, which is another thing that I think a lot of people, I know I keep saying that, but there really are a lot of unnoticed aspects that are a part of the problem that people don't really talk about. But anyways, what I was saying was people don't necessarily always know that they're contributing to the problem. And I feel like that especially goes along with this, right? Where even what I'm doing, right? I know full well that I'm not necessarily, I don't want to say contributing to the problem, right? I'm not saying people talking is contributing to the problem, but more so the fact that we're capable of all talking about the same thing without ever actually knowing anything about it or maybe doing anything about it. Just very subtle things like that. And I feel like that's where the crossroads ends. That's where, I don't know. I don't even know. It's like, it just seems like, I don't even want to say my generation, but more so the world has to make something of what we're in so that we can deal with it. But what we're in is not something that you can, measure. It's not something you can categorize. It's not something that can exist in a way that is combated against, I guess, right? Like, basically the best way I could put it into words is at every point in time, there's typically, I guess you could say, eras, if you will. There's probably a better word out there, but you think of like the Enlightenment era. You think of when Friedrich Nietzsche, when he said God is dead, right? You think of Einstein, you think of science blowing up, you think of the more religious periods in the past where religion was everything, right? Like, time has always gone through its periods and there has always been eras according to those times for what they're known for, right? But you look at us and we can't necessarily say the same thing, right? Like, let's say hypothetically, what, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, what are they going to call our time period? What could they be possibly doing? Or I don't know, like how could they be in such a position that they would even know how to categorize where we're at? And I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but it just seems like where we're at is at the end of everything that is what births more things, right? Like, I've had this conversation a lot. And the number one thing I always notice, or rather the number one thing I notice when it comes to shifts, is technology, which, surprise, surprise, right? That's not like a genius discovery. But what I'm trying to say is that specifically the 1900s, the biggest shift in my eyes was the fact that we went from taking from the natural world, and instead we stopped taking from the natural world of inventions, so to speak, and we started taking from our own inventions to invent newer things. So like, for example, right, farming, right? When farmers, for as long as they were, for the longest time, you only ever had to take from the earth. There was no other form, there was no other way in which you could be a farmer. You just took food out of the ground, took it from wherever it grew. But it got to a point now that we're so, technologically advanced that we don't necessarily take food, we create food. So in the same way, right? We don't look at the world as the reflection that we take from. We look at our own reflection and try to make an image that isn't there, essentially, right? Like, I guess you could say, instead of letting the water be a mirror, we invented a mirror, right? Like, that might be a little bit of like a stupid analogy, or like a stupid way to think about it. Like, or I guess you could say that might be a little bit simplistic, right, for what I'm trying to describe. But I guess that's the best way I could put it into an example. I haven't thought it through fully. And I know this topic is so large and abstract that it's hard to really pinpoint. So I apologize if I am not pinpointing it exactly. I try my best. I try to articulate and be as precise as possible to articulate myself. But it just seems like we've gotten to this point where we have, how I said earlier, extracted all the essence from everything, not just ourselves, right? Because people have been doing that forever. People have always extracted something from themselves for something else. But now, not only do we do that, we do it from things that aren't organic or living in any kind of human way. I wish I knew how to explain it better, but basically, it's the philosophy of hyperreality. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically the idea that humanity will become so real that what's real will be more real than what is actually real. And the best way I could explain that to you would essentially be, let's say I had a picture from the beginning of when, cameras were invented. And every single time there was a technological advance in cameras, I used the most brand new camera to take a picture of the same picture. Well, eventually it would get to the point where that original picture would no longer be considered what's real, because the most current technological advanced camera would be more real. It would do more than what reality itself is capable of. So our depiction of what's real isn't real anymore. It's more than real, right? Like, you think of how everybody talks about dopamine all the time, right? We always talk about cheap dopamine. We're always talking about, people are trying to look for cheap ways. They're trying to look for, basically, they're trying to scam themselves out of getting the real thing, right? And so it's the same exact thing. That cheap dopamine, those cheap things that you're trying to reach, are more real than what reality is capable of giving you. That's why it's so addicting. It's because there's nothing organic. There's nothing, I guess, real about anything that you're doing with that. That's why it's so, like, you can't let go of it, is because it has something in it that you can't get anywhere else, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Clearly, we know, right? Scientifically, psychologically, we know that the healthy way of doing things is the way in which you get the most out of life. But I think what happened is people, who knows when, I don't know when, my belief is sometime during the 1900s. I personally feel like the 1900s is where humanity peaked, which, again, that's not like a genius level thing to think, but it just seems like that was the best that it ever possibly could have got. And that's the reason why technology sucks so much, is because guess what? It was perfected a long time ago. I don't want to get sidetracked. I know I get sidetracked way too easy, but look, all I'm going to say is this, okay? Just let me say this one thing. Please go look at 1950s. Go look at 1950s furniture, anything. Fridges, washing machines, you name, okay, maybe not washing machines. I take that back. Fridges, what else? Just like very basic fundamental things, right? We'll just do fridges, maybe even barbecues. I think I remember seeing very, very advanced 50s barbecues that look just as good as the ones we have now. But anyways, if you go look at the fridges from the 1950s, they seem to me to be the highest, most perfect form of what a fridge could ever be, dude. It's a damn fridge. Like, no, we don't need iPads. We don't need to be able to have an AI assistant tell us what the temperature is going to be outside on our fridge, right? I don't want to be able to gamble and lose all my money on my fridge. No, thank you. I wouldn't be surprised if fridges will be as much as how cars are now, right? They're going to be damn $14,000, $15,000 to get a fridge with just the BS that they come up with. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point that I'm trying to make is that a long time ago, man, it just seems like we stopped pulling from everything that gave us inspiration, and instead we created inspiration as a means to, I guess, build on top of, but our foundation is weak. Our foundation is not genuine in any real way. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to come on here and offer my perspective, see if there's any like-minded individuals. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down what you think below. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you for watching.